on Saturday, we had an opening at the Harry Ransom Center, and it has been my desire to have the Harry Ransom Center visit with us on a biannual basis at a minimum, because that is the cycle of their big exhibits, their large exhibits. And I am still recovering from the Cyril Connolly exhibit of the 100 famous modernist books by trying to read through them, actually. And already we have the first exhibition of Gabriel García Márquez archives, which opened on the 1st. I understand there was a little bit of a gala that evening. And tomorrow evening there will be a lecture. And we asked if we could not get the curator in here, Bob. And so I want you to introduce our guest curator from, is it Whitman College?
Whitman.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So we have with us today Álvaro Santana-Acuña.
And that's exactly why I brought you in.
Okay. And you're from Whitman College, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I work at Whitman College, but I'm originally from the Canary Islands in Spain.
Right. And you're amiga. Are you also affiliated with the exhibition?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is Jenny Rodríguez-Peña. Es una periodista colombiana, pero está acá para esta exhibición.
Sí.
Okay.
Yo trabajé con Álvaro desde los comienzos de la invitación del Harry Ransom Center para preparar esta exposición para mostrar la obra de García Márquez a través del archivo.
Muy bien. Es nuestro honor. Okay.
Muchas gracias.
We were talking a little before the show just about the Harry Ransom Center. And, I think people have heard about the Ransom Center many times. Maybe they've heard about the Gutenberg Bible there, know that it has extraordinary artifacts. Álvaro, could you tell us just a little more about the Harry Ransom Center?
Yeah, the Harry Ransom Center, which is part of the University of Texas at Austin, is an extraordinary cultural institution. I think that Austin is very lucky to have the Ransom Center here because, as you said, they have extraordinary works of art, including the Gutenberg Bible, but also the first photography ever, the first folio of Shakespeare, the first book that really collected all of Shakespeare's works, and also collections from pretty major literary tradition, photography, cinema, for instance. Robert De Niro's archives are here, right? So it's an impressive cultural institution, and I was very lucky when in 2017 they gave me a fellowship to come here to work with the newly acquired collection of Garcia Marquez papers. And then a year later they offered me the opportunity also of curating the exhibition.
Oh, great.
Now, what came first, this fellowship or your book? I know you're writing a book that's soon to be out.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm writing a book entitled Ascent to Glory, How 100 Years of Solitude was written and became a global classic. So this is a project I have been working on for the past 10 years. And I'm lucky that the exhibition is bringing that project to a close and helping me to really reach out to larger audiences to explain how this book became a global classic. But the exhibition is about Garcia Marquez as a whole, right? How he became a global writer. And 100 Years of Solitude is really at the center of the exhibition. So to answer your question, I was already working on that project when I came here. And certainly being at the Ransom Center and doing my research and looking at the archives change many of the things that are in the book. So I could, in other words, I couldn't have written the book the way I wrote it without the research I did at the Ransom Center.
Y Jenny, ¿ustedes dos son colaboradores en este proyecto? ¿O?
Sí, somos colaboradores. Pues digamos que llevamos trabajando, como decíamos, más o menos hace 2 años, pero también igualmente, pues no sé si el curador quiera contarlo, pero pues sí hemos trabajado pues en la selección de los materiales, en la ruta museográfica, para también saber un poco cuál es el lenguaje y la narrativa que contamos a los visitantes del Harry Ransom Center.
Yeah, that's right. So as Jenny said, so we have been working on this exhibition for about 2 years, and she's my advisor for the exhibition, and we have worked together on, especially last May when we came together. So I knew already quite well the archives, that we were then working together to select the items and also work on the design of the exhibition.
Muy bien.
That's a very interesting point, the design of the exhibit, because we always talk about curation as essentially art in and of itself, the selection of work, the adjacencies of those pieces that you pick, the ones you leave behind. There's got to be a floor full or a room full of material that you could not place or did not place.
Yeah, and I'm likely tomorrow I would also talk about a few of the items that didn't make it into the final cut. So, for instance, Ruben Blades, the famous singer, was actually incognito on Saturday when the exhibition opened, and one of the items that I actually had to cut out of the exhibition is a beautiful letter that Ruben wrote to Garcia Marquez, and in his social media posts, Ruben actually talks about some of the items in the exhibition that inspired him to write several of his songs.
Wow. Speaking of that, I played some music when we came out here, inspired by Marquez's work, and that was Muerte en Primavera, which I think is Death in Spring?
Yeah, that's close enough.
That's close enough, okay. And basically it's a 12-part instrumental piece by an Argentine guitarist. It's Historia sin palabras.
Sin palabras, story without words.
Without words.
Right.
And essentially it's reflecting the 12 short stories of Marquez that he read. But he also influenced operas and ballets.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I noticed, because I had the good fortune of passing through the exhibit on my way here, that he wrote music, sang, and danced. He was quite collaborative with music early on.
Yeah, that's right. So from an early age, Garcia Marquez was someone influenced by music, and especially popular music from the Caribbean, the famous vallenatos. And one of his closest friends at that time was Rafael Escalona, one of Colombia's best vallenato composers. And then, he would also memorize boleros. He was, known to his friends for being a wonderful and great singer. And then also in connection to things that Garcia Marquez has inspired. So the last section of the exhibition, it's actually more about the global writer. So in that sense, so as you go through the exhibition, the first galleries, you see the world that made Garcia Marquez, right, and how inspired his works. And then the last part, you can actually see the world that Garcia Marquez has helped to create in the literature, in the arts, in politics.
I think it's no coincidence that some of the influences on Marquez were featured in the Connolly's 100 Monter's books, Virginia Woolf, Hemingway, and I can think of others if given time. But the idea that you are essentially creating a biography of Marquez. You start with his birth, his family tree, etc., and you work your way through his life. Your book is Ascent. And I kind of caught on that, because is that book, that one book that is so famous now, is that alone, would that make him a great writer, or is that where he emerged internationally? Is there one or the other, or was he both?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. So Garcia Marquez, to be honest with you, before he published 100 Years of Solitude, was a very unknown writer, even beyond maybe some intellectual circles in Mexico and Colombia. He was fairly unknown. But the publication of that book also, as we show in the exhibition, coincided with a major movement of cultural literary effervescence in Latin America called the New Latin American Novel, or Latin American Boom, which...
this was a publisher who went into South America looking for new
there were.
workers.
So in the 1960s, basically, the European novel is kind of in crisis, and then the big generation in the United States in its way out. In Spain, social realism, kind of the trendy side at the time, is also kind of its way out. So then you have this market, right? So publishers looking for fresh, new talent, and then they found that in the works of 3 generations of writers, not just one generation, but several. So then all of a sudden, international readers in the United States, in Spain, countries of Europe, and even also in Latin America, found themselves like reading the work of this avalanche of 3 generations of works by these writers. And 100 Years of Solitude didn't actually come out at the beginning of this, but rather at the end. And that was truly advantageous for the novel, right? And that really helped to that novel to succeed at the beginning. But you can become a bestseller, and that happens all the time. The question is, how do you endure one generation after another? And that's kind of a different process.
Jenny, como colombiana, me imagino que eres un aficionado de Marquez, o es como icono, ¿se dice? Ya, colombiano. ¿Ah? ¿Puedes compartir algunas palabras sobre la imagen de Marquez en Colombia?
Bueno, pues es que yo creo que cada colombiano se ha hecho su propia imagen de muchas maneras, ¿no? Porque así como, por supuesto, muchos lo hemos leído, hay muchos que tampoco lo han leído, pero tienen esa idea que también tiene que ver con la investigación que se expone a través de la exposición y a través del mismo trabajo de Álvaro, que es como realmente el trabajo de García Márquez está en la memoria de todo el mundo, así la gente no haya leído sus libros. Entonces, desde La lluvia de Macondo en sí misma, Las mariposas amarillas y un montón de otras, digamos, íconos dentro del ícono, ¿no? Que hay alrededor de toda la obra de García Márquez, me parece pues que es algo impresionante, que por supuesto habita. Esta exposición muestra que no es solamente un impacto en los colombianos, sino un poco en todo el mundo. Mucha gente que lo ha leído en todos los rincones del mundo tiene esas mismas influencias y esos mismos íconos habitan, pues no sé, las ideas de sus lecturas y de sus no lecturas. Entonces yo creo que eso es muy interesante, y lo que me parece muy valioso de la exposición y del diseño museográfico que hemos mencionado es que conecta no solamente la obra de García Márquez en sí misma con su propia biografía, que puede ser algo que mucha gente conozca, sino cómo conecta con otros manuscritos, con otros objetos que hacen parte del mismo archivo del Ransom Center, que conecta con la correspondencia que hace parte de los archivos y otras correspondencias de otras bibliotecas que también hacen parte de la exposición. Digamos como que tiene múltiples voces y es una nueva historia. Incluso para pues, por ejemplo, el mismo hijo de García Márquez, Gonzalo, que visitó la exposición, para él también fue novedoso encontrar ciertos otros hallazgos allí.
Yeah, so Jenny, so to summarize that briefly, so Jenny says that the first part of her answer was really about the capacity of Garcia Marquez's work to travel across cultures. So he's not just simply a Colombian writer, he's someone who has really traveled across cultures and countries, and to the point that even people who have not read his books are actually able to recall some of the details in his books, such as the four-year long reign in Macondo, or the very idea of the village of Macondo, right? At the same time, and that was the second half of her answer, the exhibition is also presenting a new story. So even fans of Garcia Marquez or even Garcia Marquez scholars would actually find in this exhibition things that they haven't seen before, because this is the very first major exhibition using his personal archives, and there are things that had never seen the light, the public light before. And in that sense, we're discovering things about Garcia Marquez that we haven't seen before. Even one of his sons, Gonzalo, was here with us last weekend during the opening, and there were also things that he discovered and he found really wonderful about the exhibition.
So we actually have another guest in the studio here, but he's kind of in stealth mode, but I'm going to call him out here. So Federico, do the Venezolanos know anything of Marquez?
Well, of course, Colombia and Venezuela are sister nations.
Adjacent states. And
we share, although we are clear that Garcia Marquez is a Colombian and very Muslim, he also loved Venezuela.
Yeah.
And whoever grew in Venezuela going to school, Garcia Marquez was not just what he wrote, what Jennifer was referring to, that also all what the American would call the pop culture that was developing in Latin America with what Garcia Marquez represent. The part of this magic realism movement that involved Latin America from the 60s, 50s, and go on. And Garcia Marquez was present in, you mentioned Sons, and immediately came There's a famous orchestra in Venezuela called Villos Caracas Boy, which song is Macondo, and the Macondo song is basically you who have read 100 Years of Solitude, you hear the song and the song
with the main characters, the main events
came alive. A lot of the character or situation that you find in the novel.
And this is one of the ways in which things become classics, right? So they have the capacity to travel across formats that are very different from the formats that the artist originally intended. So you mentioned the song Macondo, right? But also now Netflix is going to adapt the novel into a Netflix series, right? So, for instance, in December, the International Astronomy Association also named a star which is 91 light years away from the Earth. So it was named after Macondo. See? And the star that orbits, the planet that orbits that star is named after Melquiades, who is the character of the gypsy that periodically comes to Macondo and leaves, right? And I think there's this beauty to that idea of naming the planet also like that character. But that's the thing. This is not something that the author, of course, decided, or the literary agency of Garcia Márquez, but rather you can see how is it that classics become classics because they become meaningful, one generation after another.
One of the things that is mentioned in the brochure here, and I'm pretty sure I haven't been at the exhibition, but I promise I will be there this weekend, is about Garcia Márquez's work on the cinema. On the cinema.
Reviews,
actually, for surviving, he has to write scripts. But then, something that is, I don't know, is well known, there is in Baños, Cuba, there is a school of cinema where generation of people from Latin America, from all over the world, or from the Hispanic world, go to learn how to make movies, how to make cinema. And Garcia Márquez, for years and years and years, he went there as an instructor, as a person to teach the people how to do movies.
Talleres de guión, muchísimos.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's another dimension. You know, he was not only just a writer, he was also kind of a cultural manager, entrepreneur. So in section number 6, we talk about him as that kind of cultural ambassador. And that part about the School of Cinema, there is a tiny part in that section about that.
We're going to have to take a quick break here, but we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
The 2020 U.S. Census begins in April, and a complete count is crucial to ensure accurate representation in Congress and that all communities receive their fair share of government resources for the next decade. The Hawk Foundation recognizes the importance of the census in supporting health and well-being equitably across Texas and encourages everyone to participate. People will be able to respond by mail, phone, in person, or online. Regardless of the method, all information and privacy is protected. You matter, you count.
And welcome back to Reflections of Community Outreach.
That is correct.
I haven't done this show in a while, Greg. I'm Bob Daly, your host today. Undercover Greg is being undercover with the board and occasionally chiming in here. Kibitzing. But the real stars here today are Álvaro Santana-Acuña. He's assistant professor at Whitman College and author of the book Ascent to Glory, How 100 Years of Solitude Was Written and Became a Global Classic. También tenemos Jenny Rodríguez-Peña, es una periodista colombiana asociada con esta exhibición también. Okay. ¿Más?
Sí, así es. Entonces, bueno, como veníamos diciendo en la anterior sección, las conexiones que tiene esta exposición también con el cine, el lugar que el cine ocupó en la vida de García Márquez, se hacen visibles no solo en el trabajo que él como, digamos, gestor cultural hizo al ser uno de los fundadores de la Escuela de Cine de San Antonio de los Baños, como ya mencionó también Federico, y como Álvaro decía que hacía parte de una de las secciones, también se muestran algunos guiones en los que él trabajó en la época en que estuvo trabajando con Alcoriza en México. También se muestran parte de las reseñas que él hizo cuando fue periodista del Espectador, y allí, en este periódico colombiano, él trabajaba haciendo reseñas de cine, pues lanzado internacionalmente, que llegaba a Colombia, y se muestra también, por ejemplo, no solo la reseña de García Márquez, sino, por ejemplo, se buscaron algunos de los carteles, de los póster de cine, que el Ransom Center también en su acervo tiene una colección impresionante de póster de cine. Entonces se pone en diálogo lo que hace García Márquez con también el archivo del Ransom Center, por ejemplo, en el tema del cine. Entonces el cine es transversal.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have, as Jenny said, cinema was really central to the education of the writer from a really early age. He wrote a lot of film reviews as a journalist. So something that we did was to really build on one of the extraordinary collections of the Ransom Center is the movie poster. We were lucky to match several of his film reviews to some of the posters, and also even one film script, which is of another famous movie from the 1950s, to the review plus the manuscript of the film review and the poster, right? Got it. Just precisely to reiterate how important cinema was for him, not as something simply to watch, but to learn techniques, storytelling techniques.
Right. And we also have in the studio our general manager here at KOOP, Federico Pacheco, también es aficionado de Gabriel García Márquez.
Well, again, I grew with the books and the image and the stories, and we actually mentioned before we started the show that my father, who happens to be also a journalist in Venezuela, back in my father already passed away too many years ago, but he happens to work with Garcia Marquez in the time where Garcia Marquez was living in Venezuela during 1958-59. And there is a beautiful chronicles written by Garcia Marquez where he actually described what was happening at that time in Venezuela, because he get to Venezuela at the moment where there was the fall of a military dictatorship that had been running Venezuela for many years. And in 1958, Pérez Jiménez, he was he was overthrown by democracy, and Garcia has descriptions, article. He described what he saw the actual day where the president or the military guy went down, and he has I always remember him to talk beautiful things about Venezuela and what Venezuela meant for his career as a journalist and his career as a writer.
Well, I want to thank all of you, Bob in particular, for the company and the skills, the language skills, but also Federico for the insights that you provided us. Elizabeth Page, who has a name for that organization at the Ransom Center, and Jenny, and is it Álvaro? Álvaro. I can't pronounce anything. But it is up to me also to give out the times and dates. And I want to mention that this is going to be usually a semester. And so this exhibit will be on display through July 19th. The galleries are open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays, with extended hours until 7 p.m. on Thursdays and noon till 5 on weekends. And there are docent tours. I actually stumbled through one on my way over here. But this exhibit is going to Mexico City after this, is it not?
Yeah, that's right. And I also want to mention that there are also Spanish language tours offered every Saturday at 1 p.m. And I gave the first one. I'm leaving town in a couple of days after the lecture tomorrow at 7 p.m. At the Ransom Center. Then there will be tours offered to those who just want to take the tour in Spanish. And then, as you said, indeed, the exhibition, after being here in Austin, is traveling to the Museum of Modern Art in Mexico City, where we're going to change a few of the items among other reasons for conservation reasons. So that's why I want to take the moment to really invite listeners to visit the exhibition, because some of the items are not traveling to Mexico, especially the very famous manuscripts by Faulkner, Virginia Woolf,
James Joyce. Joyce's Ulysses is at the exhibit.
That's
as well.
right. Hemingway, even the galley proofs of the Ulysses, they are stored in the vault of the Harry Ransom Center, and even some of the James Joyce scholars don't get to see them if they don't really have a powerful argument, precisely because they're really precious, and the paper is not it's an old document. So that's why again, as I said, listeners, if you could come to see these items, you would really love what we have done in terms of putting together in dialogue Garcia Marquez with also some of the major writers of the
And the
last
website,
century.
Bob?
Website is hrc.utexas.edu, and the Ransom Center is at 21st and Guadalupe.
And I'm going to leave you with